Cupertino and made money for Cupertino, paid theirs for their city, and San Jose is stuck with me living here. Okay, and so that's why there's this issue of trying to conserve the employment lands, okay, and not letting them just be sprawled out. And so, but if you believe that the traffic is, first of all, okay, yes, please, okay, I'll wrap it up. But please read, because you see it mentions projects with a plural, and on and on. But you exempt yourself from traffic impact fees. Why is this worthy of an exemption of traffic impact fees and not the existing neighborhood?
So there are specific mitigations that are provided by the environmental study that are based on the impacts that they have to do. But we can only, because it's a legislative act, and this is technical, but you may understand that legislative acts are things that the public can vote on. So if we're doing anything that the public can vote on, it has to be a legislative act. Things that are done at the tentative map stage, this project will have to go through a full review by the city council and city staff after the voters approve it. A full review, including a full EIR and a full set of mitigations and a full set of fees that go along with that. So that still has to happen. Okay, so this is just the first step in a long process. And we are taking a huge risk here, because the city may just totally obfuscate and push us off and try to prevent it from happening.
You're not answering the question. Why are you exempt from the traffic fees?
So the way the Evergreen, it's technical, but the way the Evergreen development policy, the way that the Evergreen development policy, we have to do everything legally. We can't hide things. We can't lie. We have to be told it has to be legal. Okay? It's got to be voted on. It has to be totally straight up and legal. So the way the Evergreen development policy works, this project generates way less traffic than the 2.5 million square feet of industrial space that can be built on this site. Okay? So we can't make ourselves pay traffic fees that we wouldn't have to pay, because we're less of an impact than what's already allowed under the general plan.
But your
However, we still have
from it.
You
wrote that in here.
We have to.
Exempt.
If we said we pay the same traffic fees, then a smart lawyer could say that's not legal to do with the voter initiative. It's invalid. So we can't do things that are not legally allowed to be done in a voter initiative. We have to follow the law very strictly. We wouldn't spend all this money and make stupid mistakes like that. It has to be perfectly legal.
You need to put it into the initiative that you won't pay, that you're exempt of traffic impact fees. Why do you have to actually put that language into the initiative that you are exempt?
Like I said, because if we didn't, then we would be illegally we would be doing something that's not a legislative act. So, however, like I was trying to explain to you, the project still has to go through a full review process with the city after the voters approve it, okay? Including an analysis of traffic impacts, a redo of the whole thing, and all the mitigations that come out of that, we still have to pay, including the traffic fees. Now, frankly, you can say, I can't lie to you, because I can't. Okay, I have to represent the truth to you. So, in our budget, we have all the Evergreen traffic fees, because we know that when we go through the tentative map process, the city's going to say, you got to do this, this, and this. I'm like, yeah, we got it all right here. But I can't say it in the initiative, because a smart lawyer would say, that's not legal. You're invalid. Okay? You think I go to all this work to do something that's illegal? No. It has to be legal. It has to pass the legal test. And that's just the way it works, okay? I can't get up here and make all kinds of misrepresentations about this, because it doesn't affect Coyote Valley. Coyote Valley is inside the green line. It can be developed as industrial space whenever somebody wants to do that, okay? And the city can't change it to senior housing unless they go through a whole process with an EIR and a plan and vote on it. Okay, so it's all scare tactics.
So why add another threat to Coyote Valley when we're at one?
It's not a threat to Coyote. Coyote Valley is inside the urban growth boundary. It's allowed to be developed. It's allowed to be developed.
Why add another threat?
It's not a threat.
Let's add another threat.
It's not a threat.
It is a threat.
It's allowed to be developed as industrial. It's not allowed to be developed as housing.
That's right. It's not.
So now we have two threats.
It's
Industrial or housing.
It's inside your growth boundary.
Okay.
It's developed.
Next question right here.
Put a question on you guys' your presentation. You said you said it a couple of times that this proposition doesn't change it for everybody else. It's just for Evergreen.
That's correct.
And you said that so the city, any other developer that wants to develop Coyote Valley River, they just have to go to the city and convince the city of it.
They'd have to get the council to vote for it.
Why is your project so special that it doesn't have to do that? That it goes around that?
Because the city already went through a process to develop this property all the way to the very end, and then pulled the rug out from under.
That was industrial, not housing.
No, it was housing. It was housing. Yes. It's already approved for industrial. You can go and get a piece
So
of
you
permit.
didn't agree with the city, so you're trying to get the city.
No, that was years ago. Because we know through the history that we have in the city that you can go through a 10-year or a 5-year or an 8-year process and spend millions of dollars in good faith with plans and processes, and at the end, the council can just say, nope, we're not going to do that. So, you know what? If I know that up front, and I know that there's a housing crisis, because that process has created this housing crisis, okay, saving Coyote Valley, that's inside the green zone, that's developable land, saving that from development, does that make the housing crisis better? No, it makes it worse. You guys don't like the high-speed rail line? Ask yourself, why are we building a high-speed rail line so we can get people out of here into the Central Valley? So we're going to build thousands of units in low-density agricultural land, the most productive valley in the world, right? And then we're going to spend bazillions of dollars of public money to build a rail line out there to get them back into here to go to work. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you? So we won't build the housing here, we'll build it out there and spend a fortune in public resources to get the people back into their jobs. Tell me if that makes sense to you.
I just want to do a simple question.
Sure, yeah.
Forgive my ignorance. Who owns the land currently?
It's owned by a gentleman named Carl Berg.
So it's not city-owned land?
That's not city-owned.
Okay. And then that 367-page document, is that available in a PDF file?
It's online. Go on the city's website. Find it.
Yeah, what's the website? And I'll put it down for
Just go on. I don't. Yeah, the city posted that.
I can send you the link.
Yeah,
They
you can give us your
yeah.
information. We'd be happy to share it.
And you can read the link yourself.
I really
And it
want to know.
does guarantee.
Why am I
It guarantees
walking
the
around and showing
development
this
of
to people?
affordable
Why
housing.
aren't you so proud of it that you're showing it to people?
I don't because you know what? It's very simple. I showed you what it's about. It's about housing, like what you live in. That's all it's about. It's very simple. Yeah.
So my question is, I came here, I want to get information, I'm getting some. I don't want to read a 400-page document. So at some point, will Ponderosa or something for the Evergreen Initiative have something that is a little bit more friendly?
Evergreen Senior Home.
So the voters, a lot of voters are not going to want to read 400 pages.
You don't have to. Just go on to Evergreen Senior Homes. It has a Q&A, and frequently asked questions, answers.
So if and will it also have, a list of people that are supporting people?
Yep.
Okay, so that's on the website as well.
There'll be hundreds on it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the officials have kind of. I think we got to establish that all that list of people they put in there. That's why we are here where we are now.
Absolutely.
That's why. Got it? It's the same old for 35 years.
Remember,
that's why we are
the
here.
The community
that's
was
why it's
extremely important to the
$1.3 million
general
to buy a house in San Jose.
They don't care.
Mine should be quick.
Okay, one quick. Thank you for that.
It's kind of a follow-up to what I said a minute ago, the question I asked a minute ago about the initiative and stuff. So, what's this, if your development the initiative passes and goes through, what's to stop another developer from saying, oh, that's fine, he passed his, let's do my project this way?
Do voters initiative?
Yeah.
It's up to the voters. Yeah. Do you trust yourself?
I trust myself.
There you go. Do you trust the voters?
Look, with regards to the initiative process has been used for a lot of different things.
The city's
The SAP Center was built, I believe, on a voter initiative. I believe, wasn't Santana Row Was that, that might not have been, but the 49ers Stadium was done via voter initiative. So there's a lot of things that are done via voter initiative. And it's really a way to take an issue that hasn't been properly addressed by our local leaders and create a community discussion about that, which is what we're having now. Sharing information, what you believe, what we feel is represents the truth. So, voter initiatives are a way for everybody to get involved, everybody to have a voice in what's done, and not just a few elected leaders that realistically, I don't think anybody in this room can say have been doing their job over the last 5 years or so with regards to housing in our community. Because if they had, we wouldn't be where we're at right now.
Or longer.
Okay.
So if this man, Carl Berg, is that his name? Okay, if he owns the land and it's owned and he bought it, how do you know how long he's owned it?
He's owned it for 30 years.
Okay, so he bought it as it was zoned industrial. Why doesn't he just build industrial on it?
He's tried to.
Actually, I think it was originally zoned residential, isn't that true?
They did a land swap.
Another piece of land, there was a land swap. So that piece of property was zoned for residential. There was a piece of property that was more closer into the city center
and
that was zoned industrial. And they said, well, this would be better. So he did a land swap.
He was trying to get his cake and eat it too.
No.
Yeah. So he did his housing and various things to come back and do it over
They said they wanted this industrial there, right? So he said, I'll do it. But he's processed 3 PD permits, and he's never been able to get anybody to go out there. There's one building out there that got built years ago. It's now vacant.
So it's just not the time for it.
It's the second bite of the apple.
One other thing I think is important, I heard Carl Berg also owns some land in northern Coyote Valley, so that's what I heard.
Actually, that's Chop Keenan, who's, is Chop Keenan involved in this proposal? That's what we've read in the papers.
Okay,
He's
sorry.
Carl Berg.
Okay, he's Carl Berg. Yeah.
He's not involved in this problem.
Amy?
Does he have a connection to Ponderosa Falls? I read an article that
I have
said
a
that he
couple
bought the
questions.
assets of Ponderosa Falls. Is that...
No, he sits on our board of directors.
Okay, he's on your board.
No ownership.
Okay, so I understand you're very defensive right now, and that's fine, but I went on to the Evergreen Senior Homes, and there's a couple of things. Is it still in the process of being updated? Because there's a lot of information, but there's no facts. It's just random little bits of information. So is it in the process of being updated, or is it completely completed?
It's always being updated.
It's always being updated. Okay. So then my other question to that would be, and you had said that the initiative is posted somewhere on here, but I've been through your website. Where can I find it? Because I don't see it in any of the links here.
Do we have a link on there for it?
We don't have one on our site. It's on the city site.
It's on the city site.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will look for that right now. And then my other question is, I mean, obviously around here, the impact of traffic is huge. And I see one side saying that it's going to impact and the other side saying it's not. It's kind of my take that you're basically saying it won't increase traffic because we're not really bringing new people to the Bay Area, and you're saying it will because we are bringing new people to the Bay Area.
We're not bringing new people to the Bay Area.
Okay, so then I
Pretty much
misunderstood.
all the people that are going to buy these houses are San Jose or Santa Clara. It's mostly San Jose. Okay. And we're not, of course there's going to be new houses and there's going to be more traffic, but it'll be less traffic than what's allowed if we're developed as an industrial site. And when we build this project, we bring improvements to traffic in the Evergreen area that will never get built if we don't develop that site. Ever.
But still, we're
actually
focusing on
improves.
Evergreen. The regional impacts of this from the entire overlay means less land for employment. All of that's going to
I guess I want to know where you come up with it being less, because 55 and over, my mom is 73 and she's still driving and probably will another 10 years.
But
so I'm thinking
55 and over people, actually, some of them are working when they're 55, but as they age, they retire. They drive. They drive. It's the Institute of Traffic Engineers, which is the Bible that everybody uses to do traffic analysis, allocates a lower per unit per day trip count to senior housing because seniors drive less and they don't drive as much at peak hours, which is what you care about.
Seniors drive less, but I'm thinking 70 plus, not 55.
They drive, so the average age of the buyers in here is going to be in the 60s of Okay,
And is that in the initiative that it says that will happen, or you're just foreseeing
that's what the market is. I've built these before, so it's not just.
Okay, but there's nothing in the initiative that says they have to be sold to people 60 and above.
They have to be 55 and older.
So it's required.
Yeah, this state law actually, 80% of the homes have to have at least one person who's 55 or older.
You can choose if you want to do 80% and 20%, but nobody ever does that because the buyers in these communities, it's a lifestyle. You know what the Villages is. You've heard of Del Webb. It's all the same thing. No kids, 55 plus. It's a lifestyle thing, okay?
But it does allow kids, or it's
No, it does not allow
it does not allow any kids. So it can
no
be
kids are allowed.
It doesn't say
husband and wife.
show me where it says it.
Show us by the state
I've
law.
read this.
State law.
No, the state law doesn't say
Okay,
that.
so what happens when?
And that's implemented in these communities through CC&Rs and homeowners associations. And you can have deed restrictions as well.
So then, just out of
So that's in
curiosity,
the specific one.
if it's 55 and over, let's say you have a 60-year-old and a 45-year-old, and they're married, and the 60-year-old, something happens, they die. Does the 45-year-old then have to be required to move out since there's no one over 55, or they can stay?
That person can stay, but they can't bring in another person under 55 into the household.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, getting back to the traffic, has there been a regional traffic study done? And I'm not talking back, when you did an EIR or when the other potential developer did an EIR in 2006. Has there been an
We've done
actual?
a full traffic study.
So, is that released or can that be released?
It's part of the environmental statement that we gave to the city.
They only studied the impacts from the Evergreen traffic site, not the overlay potential.
We studied.
Not regional.
We're not required to study regional. Nobody's required to study regional. You're required. We follow the same guidelines that the city has for its traffic studies. We have to. We gave it to the city. We have to do everything the way the city does it because they're going to do it anyway.
I guess you've answered the question. It's no. Okay. And then the other question I have is you mentioned the average sale price is less than the median of current market. Is that including when you're doing your averaging? Are you including the affordable housing? Or?
Affordable housing, rental housing. Okay. Because with rental housing, we can get way more affordability than we can for sale. We can lower the affordability. Our goal as home builders, when we're building affordable housing, listen, I want to build real affordable housing. I don't want to fool around with it. I want real affordability. Okay, so we have real affordability built into this over what the city requires. What they showed you up there was the city requires for sale housing. But for rental housing, the city only requires 15%. We're doing 20%.
That's not true. That was rental housing.
20%.
That was rental housing.
And actually, I'll tell you where your confusion is because your lawyers were confused as well when they went to the city council the other day. The definition of on-site housing in the city ordinance depends on the affordable housing being integrated within the market rate units. Here you're going to have a gated community and the affordable housing is outside the wall. So the city considers it not on-site. There are other requirements that have to apply to on-site housing, including that it has to have the same access to amenities, including open space. It has to have the same bedroom count and same square footage. And all of these things have to be met in order for it to be considered on-site. So the 15%, if you're building on-site housing, you have to build 15 of your units have to be affordable. If you're building off-site housing, and the city considers this to be off-site housing, what they're building, it has to be 20%, and it has to meet this 8% very low income, 12% low income. So they're building 20%, and it's 6% very low income, no low income, 14% moderate. And I'll actually say that I think that they meant to do. I think that your lawyers meant to do it this way. But the reality is that it's not.
Explain that. It's on the site. So the affordable housing is here. It's part of the project site.
The brown one?
Yeah.
Does it have access to all the amenities that the individual houses
Yes.
have?
No. The open space is going to be inside the gate.
No, this is public open space outside the gate.
And I also want to say about the open space.
The way the affordable housing works, it has its own recreation center, but the way we've done these in the past is we provide a specific number of passes for them to use this recreation center. They don't have to pay for it. See, all this, the great thing about this community for the city of San Jose is this is all private, so the city doesn't have to maintain it. So the financial operation of this project actually brings the city a benefit.
No police? No fire? Oh, okay. I was confused. I don't know where they're
And
going.
I also
Water,
ask you about the
sewer, landscape
is
maintenance,
the creek,
streets.
right? That's Fowler Creek running through there.
It's actually just, there's no creek there.
It's called Fowler
Fowler
Creek.
Creek, but
It's
there's
called
no,
Fowler
you
Creek.
can't find the creek there. And so, but the good thing is, we follow the exact city requirements for this. 100 foot on
You
either
did,
side. Exactly.
and now you want to get credit for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Brian.
Everybody.
You couldn't have developed in there if you wanted
We
to.
wouldn't want to. Everybody gets
I'm sure
credit
you
for
don't
doing
want
it.
to.
Everybody.
Go ahead, Brian.
We're doing what's required.
The
I agree
issue with
with
the
that.
affordable housing just got answered, so I won't ask my question. Just two quick comments. As far as the politicians not doing their jobs, I would say since the traffic got crazy here 20 years ago, I would say the politicians have been doing their jobs because people did not want a huge explosion of population to add to the traffic. However, the reality now is, to make a comment to you, we as citizens, most of all, because we're the ones that always oppose new developments, we need to rethink how we think about housing going forward because San Jose has reached its limits as far as, single family home. You can't do anymore and address address the housing crisis. So your project, the 910 units or whatever, that'll be as effective as the bridge housing community helping 40 people when we have 4,000 to 7,000 homeless people in the area. So it's and what you're doing actually is, and I'm sure right now the Evergreen people probably don't want affordable, high density affordable housing development on that property, but that's what we need.
It's 3 stories.
Whatever. I want something that's going to house 8,000 people, not 900.
You can only do so much at a time. Right? So.
Well,
it's hard enough to do. But harder it is to do this.
Once that's developed, you're not going to be able to do high density on it later when we really need it.
Well, that would make traffic worse.
Yeah, there's other issues, but
That's why the city proposes that housing should be kept to infill, transit-oriented areas. It should be. It's not infill. It's the opposite.
It is. It's in the green. It's in the green line. It's in the area that was set
Okay.
aside for development.
Not everything that's inside the green line qualifies as infill. Okay, infill housing needs to be near the city center. It needs to be near transit stops. Okay, that is what allows you to build housing without having bad traffic impacts. Not everybody who lives in multifamily housing near a transit center will always take transit, but they'll take a transit a lot more often than if they're out on the very edge of the city where there is no transit.
And this is why we have a housing crisis. Nobody's building multifamily housing near transit.
What development would be acceptable to you?
Excuse me, didn't they just build a huge development at Harlem? Next to a I can't say nobody is building housing next to transit.
That was
And the mayor has a plan for 50,000 units.
Okay, that was all permitted plan a long time ago. That's not anything new. The city of San Jose issued like 2,000 building permits last year.
It's very new to us in that it's just coming online.
Right. And so the city's general plan wants even more higher density housing in your neighborhood. That's their answer. And guess what? Nobody's building it because it's not economical. And people are opposed to it. So nothing gets built. So that's why we have a housing crisis. Yeah, it's very simple. This is just about housing supply. It's just about housing supply. It's not complicated. It's not hard. It's really quite simple. It fits into the neighborhood. It's acceptable to people that live nearby. It's not an impact on them. They're probably going to buy it. Most of our buyers are probably going to come from Evergreen. Okay? It's very simple.
And the city's saying it's going to cost them money because it costs more money to service sprawl and far-flung residential areas.
Privately maintained.
Police and fire, libraries.
Only police
These
and
are
fire.
all
Everything
costs.
else
is utilities underground.
And they'll be using public parks.
It's not cheap.
Going out to
They have their own recreation
libraries,
center.
using our roads. You're not going to say they're going to drive and damage our roads?
Less than the industrial would.
See, this is the thing. This is why we said that the environmental studies that you commissioned don't comply with CEQA. Because for a study to comply with CEQA, you have to compare the impacts of the development to the current baseline, which in this case is 0 because it's vacant. What you did is compared the residential project that you're proposing with the theoretical full build out of the industrial.
You have to do that in CEQA also. You have to do that in SEQA also.
You didn't do the comparison to the baseline, so that's why it doesn't apply to
You have to do that in SEQA.
And that is what
That's
people
the real comparison.
That's the real
comparison. The real comparison here is what could be built there at any time. Okay? Any time.
Yeah, I just want to comment that there is a zoning. So, the general plan is a guideline, and the actual zoning, I believe, is still agriculture.
Industrial.
No, the zoning. The legal property rights. Is it industrial?
It's industrial.
Oh, okay, it could be.
It's had 3
It could be, I believe
permits. It's had 3 permits. Yeah.
Okay.
It's industrial. It only applies to green line.
Can you explain green line what that means?
The green line is on this side. It's actually the 15% slope line, which is used on the hillsides, and it's the area that the voters passed in 1997. Anything outside the green line is open space, but everything inside the green line is developable. Okay, and now we have people out there saying we're going to take that away and take that area inside the green line that we negotiated to be developable, and now we're going to say you can't develop that either. So I don't know. That doesn't seem right or fair or good for the city. Yeah, we're in a housing crisis now.
Which that will help it all.
On a ballot, or explain to me again.
June ballot.
All San Jose voters.
It'll be given a measure name probably in March, so measure A, B, C, what have you. So
that's another question I have. You said you were concerned about that you wanted the voters to weigh in on this and bypass the city, not doing their job and all that stuff. Why did you pick a low voter turnout election to do it? Why not wait till November when we could really have a lot more education about the initiative? And the thing about voter initiatives is that the process can be manipulated quite a bit by picking a low voter turnout election to have your
primary
initiative.
It's a statewide primary to governors. It's a fairly high turn. It's like a 40%.
it's not the highest.
It's known. Unless Trump's on the ballot, it's not going to be high turnout. So,
to me, it doesn't make sense to keep waiting when you're in a crisis situation. The sooner that we can have a vote on this, and if it passes, the sooner things can be built. So, we can continue to wait, and that just continues the crisis and the shortage of housing.
I'd like to ask you a question. How can you explain to us that this would be the only thing that will happen in this area? And it's not going to spread into Coyote Valley or other areas
because
automatically.
This initiative only does zones, rezones, applies a specific plan to this property.
This initiative
only.
The
overlay is general plan policy that only another person could put another project on the ballot for the voters to decide.
Are you putting another project on the ballot?
This is all I have right now.
Right now. That's your operative word, right now. That's what's happening.
Anybody can put anything on the ballot in this state.
This is your attempt to continue this into the next 10 years.
It opens the door. Why risk opening that door? Why do we even want to go down that road?
And if the voters want it, they'll approve it. Okay, it's up to the voters.
Yeah, you're going to ask the whole city to vote on something in someone's backyard.
And the overlay can only be applied that way or through city council action, the normal process, which you guys say is the way it should be done. So that's the only way it can be done.
So you said that you had to do an overlay legally. Well, why did you put in the initiative that the overlay can be applied to other areas?
Because it's a general plan policy.
You have to do that?
You have to apply, if you're going to create general plan policies, they have to be broadly interpreted.
Why couldn't you just rezone this parcel?
That's what we're doing. We're just rezoning this property. That's all we're doing.
Why did you put that in there about underutilized employment plans?
There are a lot of legal aspects to a general plan that have to be consistent, so you have to create a bunch of policies so you can be consistent with those policies.
But what you've done is you've created
to be a valid legislative act. Okay. We have to do things that are legal. We can only do what is legal.
Okay, I understand that you're saying that you had to do it this way, but legally interpreted, it does open the door to being interpreted as applying to other lands. It does. And I'm sorry if you say you were forced to do it that way, but the voters don't have to worry about what you were forced to do. The voters need to worry about what the actual legal impacts of this will be. That is all they have to concern. Not your good intentions, not your wish to do. I know you wish it only applied to this property.
It only
you can't
applies.
promise that.
It only. I can promise that this only applies to this property. But if the city council decides it makes sense to apply it somewhere else, that's fine. And if you looked at that chart with the quote underutilized lands, it's really only that Coyote Valley land. Everything else are these tiny little pieces of property that are meaningless.
They're not meaningless to the people who live there.
They're tiny little pieces of property.
And then that also it's up to a judge to decide what underutilized means, right? To me, underutilized can mean a lot of things, right? If you can make a better use of it, then it's underutilized.
You can't sue to get a general plan amendment. You can't sue to get a general plan amendment. Okay, it doesn't work that way.
What I'm suggesting is
you can't go to a judge and say, this measure will apply to underutilized employment lands.
Everywhere.
Period. Right?
There's no significant If you look at that diagram,
according
everything is other than this property. This property
extremely.
And those properties in Alviso are one of the biggest ones they showed up there is the Apple property that's right near North First Street, okay, and Highway 11. Okay, yeah, that's owned by Apple. Okay, yeah. So we know what's going to happen there. The Alviso properties are also properties that are in path of North San Jose commercial development. Okay, so really the only significant thing that everybody's upset about is Coyote. Okay, now that Coyote land is industrial land. Okay, if the city wants to change it someday to something else, anything else, the city can do that through their own process, right? And they have to vote on that. So, or if somebody wants to take a ballot initiative, sure they can do that. They can do that in any case anywhere. We can't stop anybody can put
the point I was trying to make is you didn't define underutilized employment lands in your measure. And therefore, you're probably going to end up being a judge who decides, if I've got a warehouse, that's employs one guy doing some sheet metal work or something, and I want to build senior homes on it, then I'm going to say that I've got a better use for it. It's underutilized,
how
right?
would a judge end up deciding that?
What's the definition of underutilized?
But what's the process where that would happen? This is all constructed.
If I was the owner, I would apply. I would say I want to build homes on here instead of this sheet metal shop or whatever. And if the city told me no, I would sue, and a judge would decide: is this underutilized or not? Whose idea?
Judges hardly ever say, "Oh, the city was wrong in that." They defer to this. You look at pretty much every lawsuit over things like that. The city, the judge, the precedent is they generally defer to the city's definition.
It happened in Los Gatos not too long ago, so it does happen.
The thing in Los Gatos was approved. That was an approved specific plan. Okay, so these guys were building per the specific plan.
There's under-oath homes only in
a member on their board.
Yeah, we got burned in Coyote Valley twice. Twice we went through, in good faith, a city policy and spent millions of dollars at the city's direction, came up with a plan, spent millions